Hello and welcome to Moments in History. I'm Linda Shenton Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. As many of you know, I love to do research into World War II and share those little known tidbits that I unearthed during my research process. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the myth of women in the French Resistance. As mentioned previously, research about the occupation of France is challenging because of the guilt, embarrassment, and feelings of humiliation of a large percentage of the French people. Memoirs are few, and those trying to collect oral histories have reported difficulties in getting French citizens to say much, if anything, about the time period. Even de Gaulle tried to put a spin on the occupation during his speech outside the Hôtel de Ville on August 25, 1944, when he shouted, "Paris liberated, liberated by its own efforts, liberated by its people, with the help of the armies of France, with the help of all of France." Obviously unaware of the 160,000 court cases involving charges of collaboration, he later boasted that only a handful of scoundrels behaved badly under the 4 years of Nazi occupation. One scholar claims that most of the population did not engage with their revolutionary path until the last minute, when the chief thing they recaptured was their pride. He asserts that the first French soldier into Paris was part of a regiment called Neuve, because it was composed mainly of Spanish Republicans. Another researcher says that when the Gaullists and communists fervently maintained the majority of French people contributed to the resistance, it was a gross distortion of the truth, motivated by the desire to win political ascendancy in the post-war period. That of the nearly 40 million people in France, only 300,000 or less than 1% of the population were even active in the resistance. After the war, de Gaulle continued to push an all-white, all-male version of the resistance. Perhaps he didn't want the men to feel humiliated even further, having spent 4 years as POWs, to be shown up by their wives and daughters. Perhaps he really did believe women had very little to do with the resistance. Of the 1,058 people he awarded the title Companions of the Liberation between 1940 and 1946, only 6 were women, of whom 4 were already dead. There were countless books and articles touting that women represented 15 to 20% of the total of French resistance fighters. And they also represented 15% of political deportations to Nazi-run concentration camps. As with all history, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Listen as some of the women speak for themselves. Resistance member Germaine Tillion, who spent the last 18 months of the war in a concentration camp, recalled, "It was women who kick-started the resistance." Asked by a German court in Lyon in May 1942 why she had taken up arms, Marguerite Garnet replied, "Quite simply, Colonel, because the men had dropped them." Then there was Vue Chevrolet, a young music student who played her violin outside the walls of the Nazi concentration camp, hoping that her friend inside would recognize the tune and take heart. Vue came very close to being arrested. Later, she forged ID cards. Jean Boucher, owner of a Parisian gallery, dared to show Wassily Kandinsky and other despised, and often Jewish, abstract artists. Cécile Roltanguay carried orders around Paris in the bedding of her baby's pram. She also spirited revolvers, grenades, and ammunition hidden in potato sacks to underground forces. Jacqueline Marie, aged 17 in 1940, wore short white ankle socks when she traveled on the metro to deliver political leaflets. Aware she might have to slip through the underground tunnels to another station if the Gestapo started rounding up people at a street exit, she hoped the Germans, if it came to it, would not question a child. Comtesse Lily Pastre, heiress to the Noirly-Prat vermouth fortune, began to hide Jewish musicians. War was also the making of the supremely elegant Odette Fabius, a Parisian Jew who worked for the resistance, crisscrossing France between 1940 and 1942 with fake ID cards. Marie Madeleine Fourcade was the one woman who was head of a network, And she managed to do that by leading the British to believe that the true head of the Alliance network was actually a man. Getting enough to eat was another form of resistance, showing the Germans that Parisians were not to be starved into submission. In the same way, dressing well became a point of stubborn pride. When there was no shampoo to wash their hair, Parisians started to wear turbans. Whatever the shortages, they determined that to retain some chic was absolutely necessary. Perhaps it drew the Gestapo's attention away from any suspicious activity as well. And if the majority of the population did not take sides, but simply tried to survive as best they could, there was some percentage who chose to resist, and a great many of women were among them. Thanks for stopping by Moments in History. If you have stories you'd like to share about women in the French Resistance or otherwhere, please put your comments in the section below the video. And remember to keep it clean. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon to get notification when anything is uploaded. You can find me on the internet at my website, www.lindashentonmatchett.com, or across social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Moments in History.